A parent's hardest job is raising children to think for themselves in a world shaped by political noise. Unknown author. All right. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. Tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. All right, folks, it is the 4th of July. It's Independence Day. We got to do some You know what? I am not dressed appropriately. Let me resolve that. Hold on. Watch. We're going to do something here. Watch. Okay, let's move some things around here. We're gonna make some changes here really quickly. First, I'm gonna need a little bit different. Let's see, move this out of the way here. All right. All right, we're gonna put these in for just a second. Because I've got some things here. So I got a hat. All right, let's see. There we go. Let's see. There we go. Oh, let's not do how about we just there we just do steady lights. Steady lights. There we go. There we go. It's 4th of July. We got to be festive. No, I'm not done yet. No. Don't go anywhere. Stay there. Stay there. Still being a little crazy. All right. All right. So I got these cool things right here. Try to put this. All right. All right. Let's put this one over here. There we go. Don't tread on me. All right. Might be a little distracting. We'll see. We'll see how we do with this. All right. All right. There we are. Now I've got the more festive look. Got my "Don't Tread on Me." Probably need an American flag here. Let's throw that one in here. There we go. We got an American flag. You can barely see me now, so let's. Maybe I can put these. Let's see here. Let's see this one. This one can go. All right, we'll put it right there. There we go. That's better. All right. Now, now we're getting somewhere. All right, turn that down a little bit. That's a little bit loud in my ears there. Okay. So here we are. All right, what are we talking about today? Well, it's going to be a little bit on the shorter show. We know what that means. No, but seriously, I do have a hard stop that I have to get to. My son is going to be in the community parade today, this morning, and we decorated his bicycle. So let me give you a show of what that looks like. So here's his bicycle. He's all decked out in America. That you can say it that way. Yes, you can say he's decked out in America. That's his bicycle. He will be in our neighborhood does a parade. They do one on let's see, they do one on the 4th of July. They do one, I believe, on Easter, and then is there another one that they do? That might be it. No, I could have swore there was another one. I don't know. We're a nice festive neighborhood. So he will be joining the parade this year. All right. So today I want to talk about this idea of, okay, I'm heavily into politics. I got a podcast. I was the chair of a local libertarian affiliate. I was engaged, at my state level, at my national level, like how do I balance politics and just being a dad? Right. Before I get into that though, if you're subscribed to me on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed. If you're watching on Rumble, please follow me there. They use different terminology. And give me a follow on Facebook and X as well. For any new folks that might be watching on YouTube or Rumble, be sure to check out past shows. That helps the channel grow. And then if you're on Rumble, it especially helps to jump in the chat during the live stream. Feel free to say hello, drop a critique or praise, whatever you want. That helps the show out as well. And then, just help this channel grow. All right. So, sorry, I wanted to get that in. I forgot. I was looking at my notes and I was like, oh, I skipped right on over this. I was so excited to tell you about, the parade and my son and some of the things that we're doing. So here's his bicycle. He's going to be in the local parade today. Again, it's just a community parade. Probably last about 20, 30 minutes altogether, as they slowly go around the neighborhood. So that'll be fun. He's looking forward to that. He's pretty excited. I'm excited for him as well. This is actually his hat that he's going to wear. He wore it to jujitsu yesterday. Not while he was in class, but he wore it to there and everybody liked his hat. And he was like, "Yeah, everybody liked my hat, Dad." And I was like, "All right, cool." So, all right. So if, I've discussed on this show how this show came to be, right? Like I got the idea just before my son was born. I was like, there are not enough podcasters in the world. I should be one. Now, I was pretty ignorant about how many podcasters there actually were in the world. Had I known, I might not have done it. So lucky me, I was in ignorance, or maybe lucky you, or maybe lucky nobody. Who knows? So I had to come up with like, all right, what's the name going to be? What what am I going to talk about? Like, what's the gist of the show? And I was getting ready to be a dad, and so I said, I talk about liberty all the time, and I'm going to be a dad. I'm like, I could be Liberty Dad. I'm like, that'd be great. Okay, what does that mean exactly? Well, liberty definitely reflects what I like to talk about, politics, grounded in libertarian values. And then dad is, obvious. I'm going to be a dad. I mean, this is in like prior to 2019 when he was born. And so I'm like, all right, well, as a dad, I'm going to be teaching him things over the years, just all kind of things. So great. And then I was like, all right, what do the two mean together? And I was like, when my son is older, I want to have a good relationship with him. And I think that one of the ways that you foster a positive relationship in the future with your children is how you raise them early on. So, like my mom, before she passed away, we had an amazingly tight relationship. I was super duper close with my mom. And and it wasn't always that way. Like when I was a teenager, I was definitely I was a hellion. I was pretty bad. So there was no closeness there, you know. But I realized that the way that I'd grown up, even though I went astray for a short season, I came back. And so I was like, yeah, I want that for my son. So how do I make sure to foster that? I'm like, okay, well, clearly I need to engage with him in a way today that makes him want to engage with me tomorrow. And then I was like, that's it. Let me hit my little button there. That's it. That was my idea. Politics discussed in a way that makes people interested in hearing what you have to say later. And believe it or not, I've had friends randomly out of nowhere just reach out and just be like, "Hey, DL, I had a question about this, this policy or this legislation or just this question in general. And I thought you'd be a good person to go to because you always lay it out kind of rationally and respectfully." And I'm like, okay, cool. And I've had multiple friends do that, like without prompting them. Like we're not like in a conversation and they thought of an idea and they said, "Hey, let me ask you this question." Like literally just they reached out and they're like, "Hey, it's been a while. Got a question for you." Well, I want that for my kid, right? I want him when he goes off to college. It's not that I need him to reach out to me and be like, "Dad, I got a question. I totally need your expertise." It's not that, right? Although that is a good feeling when people need you, right? But that's not what it is. What I want is if he has a question, I want him to always feel comfortable with asking me and say, "Well, I wonder what Dad would think about it." And it's not that he has to agree with me. Just has to be that I have developed a relationship such that he's actually interested. He's genuinely interested. He's like, "I wonder what Dad would think about this." If he goes off to college and he hears that, communism or socialism really is a good idea and that they totally just didn't try it the right way and that this next time around is going to be the one. And then I want him to be comfortable, be like, "All right, let me go ask Dad. I know Dad's talked bad about it, but I can always trust that Dad will sit down and have a rational conversation and he won't be a psycho." Okay, great. And then he will come back and he will talk to me. Man, it is so weird having the audio in my ears is way different than the big, huge earmuffs. So I'm a little distracted with that because my sound, the audio in my ears is like really different. I'm going to turn it down a little bit or something. there. Maybe that'll be it's a little awkward. All right. Anyway, so the idea that's where the idea of Liberty Dad came from, right? Was this idea that, I'm going to show people through my podcast how we can have a conversation today that leads to more conversations tomorrow. One, you got to be down to earth, speak where people are. You can't be too combative. I mean, there's a time and a place for that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, people, if they want, if you've done well, they will want to come to you for more, right? Like if I've got a mechanic that I really trust and, then I'll want to go to him when my car is broken down. Or like my scooter, for instance, I bought it from the dealer and I do not like the interactions that I've had with the dealer. And through some conversations with other people, I have found a mechanic that will work on it. And I think he's fabulous. And I like working with him. And so I keep going back. Like it doesn't matter how big or small it is. I'm like, all right, I gotta call this guy. Right. And we all do this. But we all don't necessarily think, well, when it comes to politics or the arena of ideas, how do I ensure that people will also want to come? And it's especially true if you're really interested in politics. Like if you're just casually talking about it, like when the news is on or whatever, then maybe that's not the area you need to focus on. But if you're really into politics, if you're like, oh man, I love talking about liberty, I go to events and, I watch all these podcasts and I tell all my friends and I'm on social media. Okay, great. Then you are probably the kind of person for which hopefully this show would bring value to, right? By showing you, hey, we can do this. We can do this in a way that brings people back. So yeah, I try to keep ideas simple and down to earth, right? Being a dad. Well, I mean, what do you think of a dad? Is a dad going to give you some philosophically complex idea and you're going to be like, I don't know what he just said. I mean, dad might, but the better dads out there, those are gonna be the ones that break it down simple because they understand where you are and they go, "Okay, I know where you are, and I'm gonna tailor what I have to say to you in a way that I know that you will understand it." Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is that this person walks away with better understanding than when they got here, right? That's my goal when I talk to you, is to leave you with a better understanding. Other things that we do is, we want to remain honest, objective, and bring the best value when I speak. Again, just like a dad. I mean, if you think of a good dad is honest, he's objective, and you feel like, man, I got value out of when I talk to him. So that's what I try to emulate in the show, and that's the purpose of it. That's the whole driving point. But having said all that, have you wondered where my politics fit in with raising my kid? And I mean, just like the general everyday, I'm a dad, right? Well, in some ways, hardly at all. But in others, they are there. So let's kind of walk through this. And before we do that, I'm going to hit some comments here real quick. So, Mr. Liberty watching over on X. I cannot put it up on the screen just because of the nature of how everything works out. Like I can't bring up chat from Facebook or from X onto the screen. But happy 4th of July to you as well, sir. So thank you for tuning in. Kagela asks, where is Bill? He's right here. I'll get him. It's not Bill review day, but I got Bill. He's on standby. He's here. So I'm gonna put him right here. We're gonna clog up this screen. Happy 4th to you as well, Type Surfing Alien. Let's see. Uh, yes. My got distracted. My VA lady says, I hope everybody spanks the like button on the way in or the thumbs up button. Yes, please do that. Let's see. Not Juno, not Juno. I am not. I am sober. I promise. Uh, Not Joe Hanoush says DL has the Gadsden flag higher than the American flag. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did. That's too funny. It's only by happenstance because if I like put it up on here, then you can't see me, which is I need to be higher because it's my show. All right. Is Liberty Dad grilling out today? I'm actually going to somebody's grill out. So kind of, sort of. I'll be there. And then let's see. Happy 4th, Liberty Champions. Yes. Happy 4th to everybody. All right. So We're talking about how I discuss. I'm gonna be playing with this now. Talking about how I discuss political matters with my son. Here's the answer. I don't. I really don't. I actually do not talk politics with my son. He's 6, right? So that means I don't badmouth politicians, at least not in his presence, because I don't want him to learn. He'll get to it. I don't want him to learn necessarily at 6 that he should be bad mouthing anybody, right? Like that's not where we are right now. He will learn that on his own, and then once he does, we can start having the lessons of, okay, when is this appropriate? When is this not appropriate? So I don't like, even though like there's like 3 politicians out there that I actually like out of all of them, like hundreds and hundreds of them. I don't badmouth politicians in front of them. I also don't talk about any particular policies. So I don't, say, okay, son, abortion is this, or okay, son, all gun control is racist. I don't say anything like that to him because he's 6. Okay. So what I want him to do is I want him to focus on things that 6-year-olds care about. So I want him to focus on his Minecraft. I want him to, because that's what he likes. I want him to focus on specifically on his reading and his writing, right? Like the important things, learning math, learning whatever the lesson is that he's supposed to be learning. That's what I want him to focus on. Okay. So, and I want him to be a kid. Like his job is literally to go be a kid and have fun. His job is not to worry about all the crazy stuff that us adults get all worked up over. And I'm like, nope, not going to do that. So we don't talk about policy to him. Now, if he by some chance he asks, well then yes, we tell him, right? We'll do our best to communicate ideas to him. But as a rule, I just don't talk politics to him because I just don't think it's appropriate. Like that's not what his dad should do in terms of raising him at 6. Now, when he's 15, that's a different story. We can sit down and have a conversation about things. Um, he might overhear things though, because kids do that. They do that when you don't know that. Like you're like you might like look around. You're like, okay, he's not here. I'm gonna tell my wife something. And then later on, you find out that they heard about it anyway. And you're like, how did he hear? I don't know. So, for example, he actually was watching over my shoulder. I was watching a video when Trump got shot. And for like 3 weeks, anytime he saw a picture of Donald Trump, he would like, that's Trump. He got shot. And I'm like, yes, son, he got shot in the air. But otherwise, he has no idea who Donald Trump is. He knows he's the president. I don't think he knows what a president is. And he knows he got shot, but I don't think he could tell you anything else about Donald Trump. And it's funny because okay, I'm going to put this down because this is distracting to me. Put Bill over here. It's not even Bill review day anyway. Quiet. All right. So I took the same approach for mentoring, actually. So I used to mentor before I had before we had our son. I used to mentor a kid, and it was interesting. I actually mentored a couple of kids. So I joined up with a local community organization called Daniel Kids, and what they do is they work with children who are at risk. And then what they do is they'll get women and they'll pair them with girls and they'll pair men with boys. And so the first kid that I got paired with, I could tell you his politics were completely different than mine. And that's fine. But it wasn't my job to talk to him about politics. And it was interesting because he liked art. And so he drew this political picture. And he was probably like 15 or 16. But he drew this political picture. And he asked me what I thought about it. And I don't remember what the message was, but it was a message that I actually disagreed with. And so it was wild because I was like, I'm in this position where like, okay, I disagree with the message that you sent. But I also disagree with the idea that my politics need to play a role because I'm mentoring you so that you'll grow up to be, a healthy or, contribute to you growing up to being a healthy young adult or adult. So I had to, so what I had to do is I had to try to balance out my critique. And I was like, okay. So I critiqued him on, like, is the message as clear as it could be? What message are you trying to send? What message am I receiving? And we started asking questions like, how might changing this or that affect, the message that you're sending so that it's clear? And then I think He was really good at drawing, so there wasn't a whole lot of critique there. I was just like, "Man, I can't even draw a straight line, so you're doing really, really phenomenal." Um, Now that one didn't last very long because I ended up going to Indonesia for like 3 weeks, and then when I came back, apparently he had moved back with a different family member, and so they reassigned me to somebody else. And so that young man, he had mixed politics. But again, we didn't really discuss politics. Like sometimes he would bring it up because he was like 15 or 16. And so sometimes he would ask. But I never initiated those conversations because I was like, that's not my job. My job is to talk to you about life in general. And then, do my best to kind of steer you in a positive direction, but not necessarily any specific um, political party direction. So he had a past mentor who was extremely Republican, very judgmental from his stories he told. And I think I've told this story before. This was during when Mitt Romney was running, and his past mentor tried to teach him or tried to pay his mother to vote for Romney. And I like had a fit. I was like, "Oh, that's a terrible idea." But anyway, so I was like, "No, no, we're not going to do that." So he knew that I was a libertarian, but I ensured that he always had to initiate the conversation because I felt like I would be crossing an inappropriate line. I mean, not detrimental or anything, but just not appropriate by bringing my politics into the situation. Now, what was interesting was during the BLM protest, and the young man was white, but he kind of sympathized and had a lot of, uh, like he lived in an area that was heavily black, and so I think he identified with a lot of the issues that Black Americans face and deal with. And so, when it came time for the BLM riots or riots, some of them were riots, but some of them were protests. I saw on Facebook that he was going to a protest. And it was funny because like just a few minutes before that, one of my friends had posted this list and said, like, if you're going to a protest, here are some things that you're going to want to have. Here are some things that you're going to want to do. Right. And so they were like, make sure you have cash to bail out and make sure you have a attorney's phone number, different things like make sure you have, I think they had like have milk in case you get pepper spray, just different things, just things to keep you safe. This wasn't like a list of here's how you go and be an aggressive person and cause destruction of property. It was just like, look, if you're going out there, it could get dangerous. Here's how to protect yourself. Here's some things that you're going to need. And so he had posted this, and then I said, hey, you might find this of value. And I reposted that list to him. And then he reached out to me a few minutes later and he was like, "Hey, I just want to say thanks." I was like, "For what?" And he was like, "My old mentor would have just called me a racist." And I was like, "Well, I think you should go protest." I didn't necessarily agree in full with all the BLM demands. And I definitely disagreed with the riots. I thought that was awful. Like, you don't hurt people, you don't damage their stuff, you don't steal it. So I had a big problem with that element of it. But at the same time, I'm like, hey, like you're now 18, and if you want to go to a protest, then you should, right? And you should probably go and be safe, right? Like live to tell another story. And so that was a cool interaction. Now, for me, my son, he doesn't go to protest. Now we'll talk about that more. I'll give you some of my don'ts in here in a few moments. So anyway, that's how I approach mentoring. And so you can kind of start to get this idea of like, I have my politics, I have very strong beliefs, but I also think it's time there's a time and a place for them. And so I try to make sure that, hey, read the room effectively, right? If it's not the time to talk politics, then don't. And I go to events sometimes, and sometimes people will want to talk politics with me. And I'm like, let's, and I try to gear it back, because it is important to me, but I also want to exist in this world and do it well, which means, also being a dad, I have to do that well as well. Sounds weird. All right. So here's an interesting story. He's 6 and he's got a summer reading list. And he just read this book. I'm going to put it up on the screen here for you so you can see it. So this was an interesting story. I am Jackie Robinson. Now, we don't talk identity politics in this house. It's not a thing we do. Okay. I don't believe in identity politics. I mean, they exist. It's not a direction that we go. Libertarianism is about self ownership, right? Everything from that point on either submits or is in violation. And so, but there is history to teach. There are real stories that he can learn, and there are real lessons that he can get out of those stories. And unless there's a serious issue with the book, when the school assigns a book, we're going to read it. Right now, this one's I Am Jackie Robinson. I really enjoy the story of Jackie Robinson. It's pretty amazing overall. And not just because, like, oh, he broke the color line, but I think when you dig into the details, I think there's some interesting things. So he had to read this book. Now, I had a bit of a problem with this book because, not because of the content so much, right? The book itself was fine, but I felt like, number one, he's still trying to learn to read. So he's, reading very slowly, sounding out a lot of words. And this book had a lot of words that he was maybe familiar with the words, but not familiar with reading the words. And then some of them were a little bit bigger, and they were like tricky words where it's like we're sounding it out isn't necessarily going to get you to the right pronunciation. And so, we're trying to go through this book, and what we're trying to also do is ensure that when he reads a book, even though he's reading slow and may have to, pause to figure out how to sound out a word or get assistance from me or his mother, on a word in order, So I want him to do all that, but at the same time, actually comprehend what he read. And so, what makes it challenge is one, this book it's a little bit thicker than the books that he's used to because he's upgrade now. So he's not in kindergarten now, he's in first grade, or he's going to be in first grade. And then it's got new words that he's never read before. Some of them he might know, some of them he might not. So we have to explain. I did have to try to explain some of them. And then on top of all of that, the whole story is about how he grew up in poverty and white people didn't like black people. I'm kind of simplifying here. White people didn't like black people. They definitely didn't want them in baseball. And somebody gave him a chance to break the color line, and he did. Right. And it's a good story. There's nothing wrong with this story. Like, if you were to say, DL, should I read that to my kid? Like, not a problem at all. But my only beef was, like, we're throwing all these at him at once. And I was like, man, this seems like a lot. And what makes it challenging is that he is never, I don't think the concept of not liking a kid or a person for that matter, based on what they look like, I don't even think he understands that. Like, that does not compute for him. So now we're trying to read this book with some new words and understand this story of a concept that he's never experienced, he doesn't know anything about, right? Because that's not how we behave. Our bar for friendship is pretty simple. Like, do you want to associate with us or not? It's pretty simple. Like, you're going to respect our home, and when it's appropriate and whatnot, like our views and attitudes and stuff like that. Are you just going to be a chill person? And is equally similar. It's actually even easier when he goes to the playground. Here's his bar for association. Do you want to play with me? That's it. He'll go up to a kid and be like, "Hey, you wanna play with me?" And they'll either say yes or no or whatever, right? And then we'll go to the park. He'll play with kids for like an hour, several kids running around, tag, you're it, whatever, all this stuff. We will leave. He won't even know their names. You're like, "So what are their names?" And he's like, "I don't know." Like, you play with these kids for like an hour and you never got their name? Doesn't care. And it doesn't matter what color they are. Doesn't matter what gender they are. He'll go up and he'll play with girls, he'll play with boys, he'll play with the black kids, the Indian kids, the white kids, the Asian kids. It does not matter. So it was kind of wild because, like, now I'm introducing this idea that is completely foreign to him. And it's okay. Like, I don't mind. Like, he's going to learn about it at some point. And the book was very child appropriate. So no issues there. But it just kind of felt annoying in a sense, or maybe uncomfortable, because you're like, man, I'm trying to balance all these new things to him all at once. But he handled it like a champ because, he's smart like his daddy. Now, here's a funny aside to that whole Jackie Robinson story. And I think I might have told this before. I decided that to help him understand, maybe we'd watch 42, the Jackie Robinson movie. So I look it up and it was PG-13. And I'm like, yeah, I'll be there. Like, right? That's what it means. Parental guidance. Like, I'll guide him through the movie. Um, as we sit down to watch the movie, it just never occurred to me, just didn't think about it, that it was gonna be gratuitous use of the N word. And so I had to lean over and I was like they're, they're just talking. Now he knows general swear words and he knows that he's not supposed to say them because he's not an adult. So then I had to lean over and I don't like I know some people might be all skittish. I'm not skittish about language. I just try to be appropriate. And so I lean over and I'm like, "Son, the word nigger is not a word that you ever say. Ever." "Okay, dad." Alright. So now we're good. I and he fell asleep before I had to deal with the other variations in the movie, because in the movie, they say negro, and they also say nigra, and so I was like, "Okay," but he fell asleep because the movie was a little bit slow for a child. But it was funny because, like, I'm like, "Yeah, this will be a good idea. He'll totally understand it. He'll get it." And so I'm explaining it at first. I'm like, "Yeah, like white people didn't want black people to play in baseball, but they could be just as good. If you find the right guy, and this is the right guy that was going to block. So I'm explaining this stuff to him, and then I guess he got bored and he just fell asleep. So like whatever. So he didn't get to hear the other, the N word the rest of the movie, which it got even worse. But I mean, expected obviously because it's the Jackie Robinson story. He broke the color line, whatever. All right. So that's where we are. We don't do identity politics. In fact, I'll tell you this. I will joke with him, and I have no idea where he got this. But I joked with him one day. I said something like, "Well, it's because you're Asian, son." And he goes, "Dad, I'm not Asian. I'm American." And I was like, yeah, I want to argue, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, fair enough. And so, like, we'll deal with the whole you're Asian because of ethnicity, you're American because of where you live and your citizenship. We'll get to that someday. But it was just interesting. Like that's we just don't do politics. We do, hey, be a good person, you know, be kind to other people, don't be a bully, don't let people bully you, right? Those kind of lessons. And that's what's important to us. And so far as we can see, he gets along very well with virtually everyone. I mean, there's a few kids that he doesn't really care for. He'll come home and he'll be like, "Yeah, I don't really like playing with so and so. Why? Because they're loud or something like that." Some 6-year-old answer. Um, so, all right. Now, what I like to do is I like to frame everything in the context of what I call the 3 pillars of libertarianism. This is just a way for me to kind of keep grounded and explain libertarian ideas to anybody that I come across. It's not meant to be like philosophically bulletproof. So those 3 are self-ownership, non-aggression principle, and freedom of association. And I believe that I can teach or communicate any issue in libertarianism based on those 3, in some way bring it back and discuss how those 3 apply. So, how do I teach that to my kid, right? Well, it turns out there's actually a lot of overlap between those 3 pillars and just what most adults teach kids. So, it's not always explicit, but it is present. So, let's kind of walk through it. Self-ownership. That's a good one. That's the foundation of everything, right? If you don't have self ownership, you have nothing. So, what we do is we teach him to be pretty autonomous. And like one of his earliest lessons, well, maybe it was our lesson, actually. We were out to dinner and he was maybe 6 now. So maybe he was like 4. I'm not really sure. It was like a couple of years ago, maybe 3.5. I don't know, somewhere around there. And what would normally happen is the waiter or the waitress would come to the table and I would be like, "Yeah, I'll have an unsweet tea or whatever," right? Whatever I want to drink. And then they'd be like, "Hey, what would your son like?" And then I would say, "What do you have for kids?" And they would say, "Oh, we have, juice and milk and this and blah blah." So then we'd look at our son and we'd be like, "Would you like juice or would you like milk or would you like this or whatever?" And then so he would tell us. And then one day we're sitting there and they take the waitress or the waiter comes, I think it was a waitress. She comes over, she gets our order. And before we could get to him or drink water, before we could get to him, he pipes up and he goes, he literally gets up on the counter. I'm on the table, like with his elbows, and he leans in and he looks at the waitress and he's like, "What do you have for kids?" And my wife and I were like, Wow. All right. So we're like, and then we look at the waitress and we're like, well, what do you have for kids? Boy's waiting for an answer. And so then the waitress responded to him and she told him what she had. And then we looked at our son and he was like, I'll have a milk or juice or whatever. I'm not sure which one he picked at the time, but he picked one. And then the waitress kind of looked at us and she was like, I think she looked at my wife and she was like, Mom. And my wife was like, yes. And she was like, yeah, I just want to make sure that was okay. But ever since then, he orders his own meal when we're out to eat. I mean, we assist him, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's like, like before he could read, we would say, "All right, here's the kids menu. Here's what you have to choose from. You want this? Do you want this? Do you want this?" And he would pick it, and then we would say, "All right, time to order." And we make sure like look the person in the eye, speak up, don't mumble or anything like that. Make sure that they can hear you. When they bring you your food and your drink, make sure you say thank you, right? These this kind of autonomy I think teaches kids that they own their self, right? Like think about it for a second. He's choosing to what he wants to consume. Now we have it limited, right? Like to the kids menu, of course, but he's ultimately making his own choices. That's what self-ownership is about. It's being about making your own choices and then, dealing with the consequences, good or bad, right? So if he orders a meal and he doesn't like it, well, I mean that's the way it is. We also he will come down in the morning and he will get his own cereal. I mean, we assist him sometimes. He selects his own clothes, what to wear, what we buy. I mean, to a degree. I mean, there are times where we tell him no, not very often, because one, we don't go out that often anyway. Usually, when we go out, it's explicitly to buy clothes. So telling him no would kind of like defeat the purpose. But like I'll give you an example. One time we were in the shoe store and we were looking at shoes and he saw these very bright pink shoes with a pink bow on them, clearly for girls. And he likes the color pink and he likes bright and shiny things. And he picked them up and he's like, these look nice or pretty or something like that. And I grabbed them and I put them back down and I said, yeah, those are for girls. And he says, okay. And then he moved on and found some other shoe. Right. Now, otherwise, I don't make any issue of the color pink. In fact, one of the first dads that I had on Dad Talk, that's how we got together. We were in a dad group and he was like talking about how his son likes pink things and it's okay because he's a kid and he's not expressing anything other than, "Hey, wow, this is a nice bright color. I like it." And so we connected and I brought him on the show. We had a good conversation. It was great. Um, so we do our best to give him as much responsibility as possible. We also teach him to be responsible for his own toys. So he has to put them away, right? Um, we cycle through them. He's got a fair number of toys and we don't like toys all over the house. So we will say, all right, which 10 toys do you want this cycle? And he will pick his 10 toys and then we'll put the rest of them away. And then when it's the next cycle, we'll be like, all right, which ones you putting back? Which ones you want to get out? Right. And we'll go in that manner. But we give him as much autonomy as we can within reason, right? Like again, everything's within reason. So don't think that we're just spoiling them. There are limitations on things. Now another lesson we teach him is like, hey, look, if you break your toy because you're misusing it, then we're not buying a new one, and this is to reinforce responsibility. I have to take care of my stuff because I think what people don't realize is that self ownership isn't very useful if you're not taking care of it, if you're not taking care of yourself, right? And because we believe that self ownership extends to your property, then you need to take care of your property as well. And we tell them, we're like, look, we take care of our things so that we don't break them. Because if we break them, then we don't have them. And if we have to buy more, if we have to have it because we broke it, then that means we have less money for other things. So these are all lessons that I think fall squarely within the idea of self ownership. But we don't necessarily present it like, son, this is self ownership. We just teach them the lessons. Now, here's a really interesting lesson about self ownership and property, because I always like it's like how do you teach a child about property rights. That normally the lesson is, hey, that's Johnny's. You have to ask first before you can touch it. Like that's the most obvious one. But here's one that you may not have seen. So one of it, we had a play date one time, and one of his friends came over, and his friend was like about a year younger than him. And this was a couple of years ago. And he was like, "Well, I don't want him playing with this toy." And I was like, "Okay, now I'm in a conundrum because I want to respect the fact that it's his toy and he has a right to say no. On the other hand, like any other parent, I want to teach him to share." So I was like, "How do I deal with this?" And in a split moment, just off the cuff, I said, "All right, that's fine. If you don't want him to play with that, then you need to put it away. You need to put it out. Only have the toys out that your friend can play with. And you put everything else away and you can't play with it either." Right? Like we're not, I mean, we're trying to make it simple for a 6-year-old, right? Like if you're an adult, I mean, you could be like, "Hey, this is mine. I'm playing with it right now. You don't touch." But for a 6-year-old, it's just easier to say, "All right, if you don't want your friend to play with it while they're here, put it away." And that way we'll respect your desire, your right to maintain your property in the way that you want. Now, I know people could argue and say, "Well, DL, it's your house. You and your wife own everything." Yes, in the strictest sense, yes. That doesn't help when we're trying to teach our son a lesson. And what I want him to I want him to be able to navigate the world in a meaningful way. So for me, that lesson was it was really more about managing the sharing, but it was also managing, okay, it's your property. How do you want to manage this? Okay, great. Let's do that. So I think that worked out well. Now, again, a lot of these lessons are just going to be what you might think of as just like, "Oh, those are normal everyday lessons, DL." Yes, but I think that they go toward laying the foundation for some of my libertarian values without explicitly saying, "Son, we're libertarian in this house," which wouldn't even be true because my wife is not a libertarian. I know I'm working on it. I know it's tough. Okay. She's a tough cookie. Okay. She's like not easily convinced. So, anyway, so the non-aggression principle. All right, number one, we don't spank. Now, it's not that he's never had a swat, but he's never ever had a spanking where you like, "Come over here, I'm going to give you three spanks for telling me a lie or something like that." We don't do that. Um, the few, very very few times that he's ever had a spank, a single spank, it was because either he was like getting extremely out of hand, was like throwing toys. Like I think one day he got mad because I told him no about something, and he went into his room. He grabbed all these marbles on the floor and then like threw them at the wall. Well, our house is like mostly windows, so I got really lucky that he didn't throw them at the window. So he got a single swat on the butt and told, "Hey, you go to your room." And then also if it's an issue of danger or hitting somebody else. So like one day he was mad and he, because I told him no, and he was standing next to his grandma and he smacked his grandma. And then I just kind of reached over and gave him a slight slap on the cheek. And I was like, "You don't hit your grandma ever." Right. Again, there was like, it's very limited, but we generally teach him, through our own actions. Hey, the aggression has a place, but it shouldn't be the tool that you reach for first. You should find other tools. Um, and so for instance, in much less, much lighter sense, when it's playtime, he's allowed to play rougher with his daddy, me, than he is his mommy, and then definitely not play rough with grandma. And we tell him, we're like, "Look, do not play rough with grandma. Be careful with the dog. Don't play too rough with the dog. You could play rough with daddy, and then don't play rough with mommy. Like, don't do certain things." And so we teach him like, aggression, which that's what it is. Like if you're like, "Oh, we're gonna wrestle and fight and punch each other," that's aggression. It's not a bad thing. It's just it's a thing. But then there's aggression where it can be, like, "I'm so mad at you, I'll slap you beside your head." Right? We don't do that. So we teach him ultimately that you have to be mindful of your aggression and that certain aggression under certain circumstances is not acceptable. We've also enrolled him in jujitsu, which I think has some great lessons, especially this particular. I don't know if they're all like this, but this particular instructor, who I had on the show, by the way, um, he is phenomenal. I love the lessons that he gives. I think the lessons that he gives might even be better than mine because If my son were dealing with a bully, I would just be like, "Well, I guess you're gonna have to punch him in the face." I mean, maybe I'm man, no, okay, I probably would say that. If he's dealing like, if it's a real bully, like a bully's actively picking on him, taking his lunch money or something, serious. I don't mean like somebody just calls him a name one time, but I mean like really is a bully. Okay, maybe you need to punch him in the face. That's not really a good lesson, and it's counterintuitive to the whole non-aggression principle, right? But for me, I'm like, all right, well, kids at that age, like it'd be nice if they could all talk through their problems, but the likelihood is that only if there's a conflict like that, only one of them is likely going to be talking. So that's what I. But when we go to the jujitsu lesson, he's like, "Look, we don't use strikes for these reasons," and he lays it out primarily because they want to be able to control the situation better. And when you strike somebody, the moment you strike them, they could fall back. They could, any number of things could happen to them for which you have no control over. And so the grappling and all the other lessons teaches them to maintain a certain level of control over the situation. And he also goes into, okay, here's how we deal with situations where somebody is being a bully. So maybe somebody's calling you a name and eventually you get tired of it and you say something like, "Are you challenging me to a fight?" Which is basically kind of like, it's in a way, it's kind of saying, like, "Hey, is that where you want to take this?" And it's also not starting a fight, right? It's not like going up and swinging on somebody. It's like, "Hey, we're gonna we're not gonna do a lot of talking, but the amount of talking that we're gonna do is gonna lead us to one of two situations. Either we are gonna throw hands, or we're gonna walk away. And then hopefully through this manner, if we walk away, this will be done. This will be over." So I like those lessons because I think they're actually better lessons for the non-aggression principle than I would have. Right? At least for now. Yeah, when he gets older, I think it'll be a little bit easier, to say, all right, this is, yes, some kids are going to say some mean things to you. And yes, sometimes there is no amount of words that you can say that will get them to back down and be chill. Right. So you may have to just walk away, which also is another lesson that they have in there. So I think all these things go toward teaching the non aggression principle. And so again, these are, like I said, they overlap and you might think of them as mostly like these are just normal childhood lessons. But these are the lessons that we give them because I don't teach them my politics, but I do. My politics are grounded in certain values, and I do want to teach those values to him. Now, what he ends up being, if he ends up becoming a Republican or a Democrat or, good Lord, a socialist or a communist, I've failed then. But like whatever he ends up being, hopefully these values stay with him. Don't hurt people. Don't steal their stuff. Right. Freedom of association. That's the third one, right? We never force him to participate with another kid that he does not like. Um, Now, it's not very difficult right now. So we might go somewhere and he might be like, "I don't know if I want to play with them." We'll be like, "Son, just play with the little kid. There's only two of you." And we will just kind of like convince him to do it. We don't really force him, but it's not hard to convince him. So we're in good shape right now. We also balance activities based on whether he's interested or not. And by balance, I mean like for a while we were taking him to swim lessons when he was really little, and he was cool with it, and he liked swimming, and he was great. It was like we'd get there, and he was excited to get in the pool, and then out of nowhere, he just hated going to the pool, hated it. We'd pull into the parking lot, and he would just start crying and be like, "No, I don't want to go." And you're like, and and if you ever look like not forcing him to do activities that he doesn't want to do is kind of easy because the alternative is just you losing anyway. Because when a toddler does not want to do something, like really doesn't want to do something, you lose. Just end of story. But so what we try to do is we try to say, okay, do you not want to do this? So if it's an activity that is coming up, like maybe vacation Bible school, we'll say, hey, do you want to do vacation Bible school? And we'll tell him what it is and when it is and what he's going to be doing, right? To the best of our ability. And then he'll say, "Yes, I would like to do that." And then we'll go, "Okay, great." So then we'll take him, right? So we give him that choice. He's 6, but we give him the choice. We give it to him as often as we can. Now, again, mind you, all of this is still in the context of I'm the adult, you are the child, right? But what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, okay, let's extend this autonomy. Let's extend your freedom to make your own decisions. And in some cases, We will, yes, override his decision because for whatever reason it's necessary, it's appropriate. But as often as we can, we don't. We try to keep it like, okay, you've made this decision, fine. Now, sometimes his decisions have consequences. So, like, if he's eating dinner and he decides he's just done, he doesn't want to finish his meal, and we don't give him a ton of food. Okay, so we'll give him an appropriate amount of food for which, yes, it's reasonable to expect you to eat all of that before you have your ice cream. So if he decides he doesn't want to eat it all, and sometimes he does, he then we'll be like, okay, well, you don't have to eat it, but you're also not getting ice cream, right? So you can make this choice, but the choice comes with a consequence. This is not really freedom of association at the moment. I'm just kind of sidetracking a little bit. Um, but you see how we just kind of keep this idea in mind and we balance what he wants to do based on whether he's interested in it. Now, there are times where we kind of impose a little bit. So, like, there have been a few times where we're going to jujitsu, which he actually loves. He loves going to jujitsu, but every now and then he's just not in the mood, and we will insist. And most of the time, it ends up working out. I think once or twice we've had to just be like, "All right, I guess this isn't happening today. We're just gonna go home." Uh, so, we give him as much latitude as we can to direct his own path, which includes who he associates with. Now, he sees us associating with many different types of people, and he does like I don't think he understands the depth of how different some of these people are from us because visually they're different, right? We have a lot of friends that are of all races and colors and whatnot. They're all over the place. White friends, black friends, Asian friends, whatever. We got them all, you know. So he sees that. So from us, he experiences this idea that freedom of association, um, in the more positive sense, includes being inclusive. Now, we don't say being inclusive. We're not like, oh, you got to be inclusive to be inclusive, because again, we don't do identity politics. We're just like, hey, if this person is a good person and we have a shared interest, then yes, we associate with them, and we don't care what they look like. So, or any of the other, immutable features. So he sees us associating with, but as he grows up, he's going to learn, wow, some of these people have very different ideas than mommy and daddy. And that's okay. Because unfortunately, in this world, it seems way too often like people abuse, in a sense, the freedom of association. And we don't want them to, like, we want them to exercise it earnestly with good intentions. I mean, you can exercise your freedom of association poorly. If you're like a white supremacist and you're like, I hate black people and Jews and whatever else, and then you don't want to hang out with them, I mean, that's fine. You don't have to. I just think that's a poor way to express your freedom of association. And I would rather my son express it in a positive way, but we don't go out of our way to do it. We just say the way to express it earnestly is to focus on shared interest and good people. And that's it. And if we end up having a lot of white friends, then we have a lot of white friends. If we end up having a lot of diverse friends, then which is what we actually have, then so be that. That's fine. We don't look for diversity for the sake of diversity. We just remain as open and hospitable as possible, and then therefore people want to associate with us. Now, I told you earlier there's some things that I don't do. So here are some things that I don't do when it comes to my politics and my son. Number one, this is the big one for me. He never, ever, ever goes to a protest. And what I mean by protest is not an event. Like, there are some events where I wouldn't call them a protest. Maybe there's a protester there, but I wouldn't call it like if it's a like when I went to in during COVID, I went to an anti-lockdown protest. Did not take him. I've been to one of the BLM marches here in Jacksonville. Did not take him, right? Because that's in a sense a protest. Now, it may be a positive thing, and that's fine. But the reason I don't take him to a protest is because if violence occurs, then I have to figure out how to A, get out of there, and B, more importantly, get out of there with my son safely. I don't want to be in that position. I've seen some photos and videos online of, some kids that have been, screamed at a protest, or by somebody else. Or in one case, I think there was a video going around where there was a child who got who I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but they got pepper sprayed. While they're and I'm like, and they were a child like 10 or something like that. They weren't. We're not talking like a child and they were 17. And they could somewhat make a decision to go there. No, we're talking about a child who has no business being in such a hostile situation. So for me, he doesn't go ever. You know. Now, the other thing I don't do, I never use him as a prop. If you follow me on social media, you'll notice that I very rarely mention my son in terms of politics. And when I do, it's usually more about me and how I behave than him. So I don't like, you're not going to see a post from me like, my son came up to me yesterday and he was just in tears because they passed the big beautiful bill. No, I don't make posts like that. That's using your kid as a prop, and I don't think it's appropriate. He is a child. He is not a political pawn, and he's my child nonetheless. So it's important to me to raise him uh, as a child. He wants to have fun. He cares about Minecraft. He doesn't care about what us adults are complaining about in the politics. Right now, you might see him in photos, but those photos are generally where it's like, oh, it's a cute kid that happens to be there. So like he's got a photo with Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen when they were running for the Libertarian Party for president and vice president. He's got pictures with them. Well, I think he's got a picture of holding her sign and then a picture with Spike Cohen. But again, these are done just in the context of like, hey, I'm at this event and here's my kid and look how cute he is, right? But we weren't trying to use him to send any particular message. So there was no like, this kid holding this sign, you should vote for Joe Jorgensen. It wasn't like that. So that's how we maintain it, because he does go to me. He does go with me to a lot of events, a lot of Libertarian Party events. You'll see him at, and you'll see pictures of him there. And he might, we'll take a picture in front of an interesting, picture or prop or something like that. But again, it's meant to be, hey, we're having fun. We're here. Not my son has some vested interest in my politics when he's obviously 6 and has no idea. So I don't do that. The other thing I don't do is I don't really talk about political parties or anything related political to him. Now, if he asks, then I'm out. Like if he's like, "Hey, is that Donald Trump?" Yes, that's Donald Trump. He's the president, right? Yes, he's the president. Okay, and that's it. Like I'll answer his questions, but I don't try to take it any further. Just because I'm like, if he's showing interest, that's fine, but I'm not going to impose upon him. I don't talk about parties. I don't talk about which one's better. Or I don't. You don't hear me walking around but like them Democrats or those Republicans are bad. He has no concept of any of that on purpose, because I want him to be raised as a kid until it's such time for him to become an adult, and or when he's interested in these things. To me, that is the appropriate way to be a Liberty dad or a Liberty mom, if that's who you are. So there you have it, folks. I think that kind of summarizes how I raise my son, being somebody that's so interested and involved in politics. And now we're getting to the end of the show where I got to head on out and go with him to get in that parade. But first, let's check out some comments and see what you guys are saying up in the chat here. All right, let's see. My VA lady says, I hope everyone has followed Liberty Dad on his Rumble. They got a link there. And hope they chattered over there too. So make sure you join the live chat and say hello. It helps out the channel tremendously, actually. This month, I've got to get 20 unique chatters, and I think we're at like 7 right now. So if you're a regular, you've probably already been counted. So if you're not a regular, if you're one of those people watching, just get you an account, come in, say hello, let me know how things are going. It helps to comment after the show, but that doesn't go toward the chatters. So after the show, if you comment, that just helps the algorithm so that other people will see it, which is also good. So help me out when you can, folks. All right, let's see what else. Is Liberty Dad ready to bring his own receipts when it comes to the BBB? I know I'm ready with Thomas Massey's ex-Twitter receipts. I've been bookmarking a lot. Yeah, I think so. I've got some things that I've said, and I've got some bookmarks, and usually I don't bookmark things for too long. I just have a really, really good memory for things that I've tweeted. I'll forget what I told you 5 minutes ago, but man, I'll remember what I tweeted to you like 3 years ago. Oh, something weird with me. Let's see. Joe, not Joe Hanush says people have natural freedom of association in society that teaches them to do so via race, gender, religion. You're right. I agree. And I don't necessarily mind that people I don't mind that they get grouped together based on interest. So, like, hey, we have this shared religion, we have this shared race, we have this shared height, whatever, right? Like all of that's fine. I have no issue with that. You can totally do that. I just don't think that we need to lead with that. So, I don't lead with me being short or me being Native American. I don't necessarily lead with me being libertarian unless if there's a conversation and someone says, hey, are you Republican or Democrat? Well, then, yeah, now it makes sense for me to talk about being a libertarian. Or if we're talking about some sort of policy, I might say, well, as a libertarian. But otherwise, I generally avoid identifying with any particular group unless it's relevant to the conversation. And I mean explicitly relevant. I mean, you can make things relevant. You can be like, well, as a short, cis, heteronormative, almost white Native American who is a libertarian, I believe this. Like, you could force it. You see, I'm not even good at it. Like, I can't even fake it. No faking it till I make it. But we stay away from those and just identify based on our group as needed. Let's see. We don't need Deegan turning him into a Democrat. I feel like that's probably not going to happen. It's okay. And I don't mind that he met the mayor. That's cool. Like, if he had met a Republican mayor, same thing. Because for him, he got a book. He doesn't know anything about her politics. He doesn't know whether she's a good politician. He just knows she is the mayor. He has no idea what a mayor does, right? Or should do, or shouldn't do. He doesn't know any of that stuff. He just knows, hey, this lady was reading a book to me, and then I got a free book. And we left it at free. He'll get older, and we'll teach him about the word free. Ain't no such thing as a free lunch or book. All right, folks. I think that's it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. Hopefully it was entertaining, the get up and the look. And I know that I was supposed to have the American flag a little bit taller than I had the other flag. I understand that. We'll put it down here for the end of the show here. Now that, it can cover me up a little bit, and that's okay. But anyway, I will see you guys fresh again Monday. By the way, if you're Rumble Premium, Sunday night, expect the next installment as I walk through Zoran Mamdami's platform. Last Sunday I did it, and I've been putting out some of the clips of it. I put a clip out just last night on YouTube and on Rumble, so check those out if you haven't seen them. I talked about his rent freeze idea. I'll be going, and the last week I did all of the housing. And this next week, I can't remember what's on the list, but we're just literally walking down his platform, and I'm talking about him in a sensible way from a libertarian perspective. So look forward to that. But otherwise, I will see you all Monday. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you are there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. You can also become part of the community by heading over to libertydad.locals.com. Remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.